Soma is the body. So without getting into too much of the nitty-gritty, it is the connection between the mind and the body. It is understanding what you're experiencing internally and making decisions accordingly. I think a lot of us, especially in the world that we live in, just power through the messages that our body is sending us until, like you said, we go to club medicine. We just power right through. But our body has a lot of wisdom, and somatic therapy.
Welcome to the Business Ownership Podcast, brought to you by Awareness Strategies, helping you navigate the waters between entrepreneurship and ownership. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I am super excited to have you here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Helen. Helen, thank you so much for being here today.
I am so happy to be here, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. Do you mind, just before we dive in, for listeners, if you guys are getting value from this podcast, just take 30 seconds and give her a 5-star review, because I've been listening to a lot of these shows and there's just so much value. And that's how you get more listeners.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you for that. I love it. So let's dive in to let everybody know, who are you and what do you do?
Very, very good. Yeah. So my name is Helen Malinowski. I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker. I am a somatic experiencing practitioner and the founder of Kairos Counselings, which is a 7-figure group practice in Massachusetts. And I also run the Somatic Integration Institute, which I created as a leadership incubator for established mental health practitioners who are successful but exhausted.
Nice. I love it. So before we get into all the details of that, just brought up questions for me. How did you get into this as a thing for you? What started this spark?
What started it all? Well, I'm a social worker by trade, and I am a social worker because I like to help people. And I had no idea what I was getting into when I signed up to go to graduate school, and came out of it really enthusiastic about the work that I could do in the healthcare profession. And I worked for a while in addiction treatment. And eventually I was pregnant with my son, my youngest, and I was a clinical director at an addiction treatment center. And for those of you who are in that role or know that role, you know that it is intense. And I just kind of up and left. I couldn't do it anymore. My morning sickness was terrible. The stress was just too much. And I left, and I decided in my second trimester that I was going to open a private practice, and I was just going to do it. I needed control over my schedule. I needed to be able to be, home when my daughter was sick, able to get to medical, doctor's appointments. And it was great, and it was wonderful. And I had not learned a thing from my previous experience of what I now know was burnout. And so several years later, COVID came around and it happened to me again. And my doctor basically sat me down in the office and said, my primary care doctor, and said, Helen, you're burnt out. And I didn't really believe it at the time. So it took me a while to really learn this lesson that you can only work so much, you can only push so far before your nervous system says, I'm at the max and I just can't do it anymore. And so I learned from that the second time around, because we don't always learn our lesson the first time around. And
or
the third or fourth. So it's an ongoing lesson. It's an ongoing lesson. And yeah, so I built Kairos, Speaking of Hope Counseling, and Kairos Counseling's my group practice from that lesson. I built a place that has community because I realized that that's what I needed. I built a place that allowed me flexibility, that allowed the way I work, which is I like to have a lot of different things that I'm involved in. I like to be able to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and pursue my passions. And I created a practice that allowed me to do all of that because I learned I can listen to my nervous system, I can listen to my body, I can follow the messages, and I can build a sustainable practice based on that capacity, not based on these traditional business models that told you how to do it, which is work more hours, get help that you don't know how to manage, and all of these other suggestions that tend to come in that were contributing to my burnout, not helping me. So
absolutely. I always had my favorite saying in that scenario with high performers was always, you can go to Club Med or you can go to Club Medicine.
Hmm.
But if you're not consciously choosing your downtime, then it will choose for you. Everybody has a shut off switch and it will just kick in and go, nope, we're done. Bye bye.
Yeah. I mean, if your body's going to tell you when enough is enough. And I think the biggest lesson I learned is that if you create your business from a place of nervous system capacity rather than business strategy, so nervous system strategy rather than business strategy, you are going to create a business that, I mean, you can take that downtime. You're going to take that downtime. You're going to take your vacations. You're going to take your time off. But it's but that downtime in a lot of ways, that self-care, for lack of a better word, is built into the structure of your
Absolutely.
organization.
Nice. And sometimes we call that a lifestyle business, and you got to plan your big rocks and put the rest around. You can absolutely create a successful business with you first. And
With
in
you
fact, I
first.
highly recommend it because they last longer. They
They
have
do.
proven to last longer than traditional businesses. So let's get into some semantics here, just for people that don't know what it means. So, somatic, you kind of toss the word around a couple of times. What
Sure.
is that kind of definition and what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So somatics are soma is the body. So without getting into too much of the nitty-gritty, it is the connection between the mind and the body. It is understanding what you're experiencing internally and making decisions accordingly. I think a lot of us, especially in the world that we live in, just power through the messages that our body is sending us until, like you said, we go to club medicine. We just power right through. But our body has a lot of wisdom. And somatic therapy, somatic experiencing therapy, which is actually the modality that I'm trained in, was originally founded to work. It's for trauma therapists to work with clients who have trauma because we have learned that those traumatic experiences get stuck in our nervous system and they need support to be worked out, to be experienced and explored and integrated in a way that doesn't continue to impact you in an ongoing way. And so we can apply that. We don't need to have trauma to apply that to our own experiences and to our own life, to integrate stressful events and learn about how can I work through fears of visibility, or how can I work through having better boundaries. As a business owner, what is one thing that we run, especially women business owners, what is one thing that we run up against quite often? Saying no, people pleasing, having poor boundaries.
Yeah, I
And
think COVID kind of exploded that one for a lot of people because
mhm,
for the longest time I was like, I have boundaries. I am good with this. Like, this is how I structured my company. And then COVID hit and it was like, oh, all of those boundaries you had no longer exist. And
mhm,
you just can't run a business with those with the boundaries that I had in place. And I was like, oh my, this is
mhm.
interesting. And finding a new depth in myself of kind of how this is going to go down. It took about 6 years to get there, but it happened. But talk to me about, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, especially type A's, that are just, I'm here to go. I grind. I run my business. I'm success oriented. I know what I want to do. I find that they have the hardest time seeing the signs of burnout,
Mhm.
even though they're probably the most susceptible to them because they're pushing that boundary all the time. But to them, there's that fun line, right? Like
Mhm.
living on the edge is fun for them. So it's
Mhm.
not really a negative in that sense, but then all of a sudden it is. And so how
Exactly.
do you work with them to, let's start with identifying what the symptoms are. Some people go, yeah, I know I have it. Come on, let's get to the good stuff. But let's get
Mhm.
to start with the how do you know that you're approaching burnout or that it's just becoming all too much?
Absolutely. I will say that on my website at somaticintegrationinstitute.org, if you go to slash burnout dash assessment, I have a free assessment and that you can take and you'll get your results. There are a number of different categories of where burnout presents in your life. I will say that my experience was that I became disconnected from the people that were important to me. I was more irritable. I was both sleeping too much and yet not sleeping well. And I also found myself doing a little bit of like the numbing with alcohol as a way to cope. You just get home the end of the day, take a little bit of the edge off in a way that wasn't healthy or helpful or really improving anything. Getting lost in my phone as a way to take the edge off and to numb, playing too much, what is it? Block blaster or something, right? But the
Yeah.
reality is that it's your body, your nervous system, your energy is overwhelmed
Mhm.
and your body starts to it says I'm going to shut down, and I'm going to shut down in various different circles of your life. I could shut down emotionally and disconnect from people that are important to me. I could shut down socially,
Mhm.
and I could shut down physically. I could start actually having the physical symptoms of chronic pain, fatigue, loss of sleep. But there are a lot of different categories, and there's different strategies based on where it's showing up in your life. So I don't want to generalize too much. I really recommend people go and just take the assessment and see what's
Mhm.
happening. I will also say that particularly for us in helping professions, it's really easy for us to see it in other people, and it's really hard for us to see it in ourselves. So don't be shy. Go out there, answer the questions, ask people around you, how do I seem like I'm doing okay? Because they're probably going to give you an honest answer
Mhm.
if they care
Well,
about you.
so two things on that. I find some people, it's the words, and they start
Mhm.
saying different things to themselves, like, I'm done. Okay, I'm done. And I got to walk out of the room. When you start doing that, it's usually a pretty good sign. And your verbal will be variations thereof. And
Mhm.
I also find that people, especially in the helping profession, think that they know this and therefore it doesn't affect them. And I just want to say, yes, it does. And it's okay. Like, I hate to break to you, but you're human.
Mhm. We're
Congratulations. You're
all human
walking the
beings.
planet with the rest of us. And we have this really weird kind of other side, if you want to put it that way, of humanity, that regardless of what you know and regardless of how you can help other people to identify these things, that we all have this kind of secret sauce going on behind us, that it's like an alter ego going, ha, they'll never know. It's like, yeah, and only somebody else can help you to find that and deal with it. And it's the weirdest thing, but it happens, and it's just part of being a human.
Well, it's so true. It's like going back to where I discovered it was my primary care physician who happened to know me. If you're lucky enough to have people in your life who both understand this and know how you're supposed to be or how you used to be,
Mhm.
and then you can listen to them. Because my first instinct, even when those are the words that came out of his mouth, was like, not me, I'm fine.
Right?
And I'm glad I pushed past that and I didn't listen and I didn't listen. And I think the other thing that sometimes happens is when we get to a place
Hmm.
of feeling really kind of at the end of we don't have a lot of energy left, and we're just grinding, right? We're just like, I'm going to get through today and then I'm going to get through tomorrow, and there's not really an end in sight, but it's okay. We don't have that extra space. And so if you're listening and you're in that position, listen please listen. You don't have to be there. There are ways to make changes that don't require an awful lot of effort, that really just require you showing up for something. I created the Catalyst Collective at the Somatic Integration Institute for exactly this reason. Because if you're burnt out, if you're at the end of your string, if you don't feel like I have time to even take a burnout assessment quiz or fill out. I have some wonderful tools, but I realize and I recognize sometimes we don't have time to even, or feel like we don't have time to even do that.
Hmm.
But you can show up for a strategy session where we do this, where we do a nervous system assessment, where we see where you're at, where we look at what your practice looks like. If you can just show up for that, then changes are going to start to happen. You're going to start to feel almost immediately. The thing that I hear is that within that first month, you already start to feel a relief, like the pressure's off, and you continue to show up and you continue to be part of a community where people get it because they're there, they've been there, they're working through it. and things start to shift and they start to change. So if you're listening and that's how you're feeling right now, know that it's not something that you necessarily need to do. You don't need to do it on your own. We're not expecting you to fix this on your own.
Nice. And even I find if you're just not where you want to be in life, it's like, I want to be there. I want to be happy. I want to be outgoing. I want to be positive. I want to be optimistic. And I'm just not doing those things in a day.
Mhm.
It can be as simple as that, and absolutely connect with Helen and of course, peeps, we have all of Helen's links in the show notes. So go ahead and scroll down, open up a new browser. You know that.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's talk about kind of once somebody's in that phase. Okay, so they know they're in burnout. They know that something's not right in Texas.
Mhm.
How do they start working on how do they start working on it? What's kind of the premise of the foundations that you go by?
Absolutely. So the premise is that we need to first understand how much capacity we have. We need to understand what we're starting with. And the analogy I sometimes use with people is imagine you're at a stove and you're cooking and you've got all of these different pots, right? You've got your lobster pot, you've got your tiny little saucepan, you've got all of these different pots. We need to understand how big is your pot, right? Are you working with a little saucepan? Because if you're working with a little saucepan, we're just going to put in just enough for your nervous system to absorb and change and adjust and slightly increase. And eventually the goal is we're cooking in a lobster. I'm from New England. We're cooking in a lobster pot, right? Nice big old lobster pot. But that's through a process of learning and embodying healthy boundaries. It's through a process of learning, how do I rest? How do I actually allow myself to rest so that I can heal and repair my nervous system? And in doing that, we start to through the Catalyst Collective. And again, this is a great cook pot. It's a cook pot, right? Where you're coming together with other clinicians who are all doing this together. You're going through, I developed in my own journey, I developed what I call the somatic leverage system. And it's a 7-part system that helps walk you through understanding your nervous system capacity, building from a place of a solid ground, and using those to build your team, understand how to market in a way that is aligned with your nervous system, and ultimately get to a place where your business is growing and your business is thriving, and you're also integrated and regulated and supported.
Nice. I
So
love it. So when somebody's going through this, have you noticed that there's kind of touch points that they will either one kind of quit and go, no, this isn't working,
mhm,
or that, it just where
mhm.
they take themselves out of the game.
Absolutely. I think the big things are I can't do this because I can't afford to not work the way that I not work as much as I'm working.
Mhm.
We work in a system for the therapists who are listening, they all understand this. We work within a system that that not prioritizes, but it emphasizes dollars for hours.
Mhm.
So you're spending more time with clients. You're seeing maybe 25, 30 clients a week, and you're making, say, $150,000 a year. And you think, well, I can't rest because rest means I see fewer clients. And I think that's a false belief
Mhm.
because I've seen from experience that when we slow down, our our the impression of our options, right? The perspective shifts and changes, and we start to see that there are other options, there are other ways of working within this system, or how do I step out of the system?
Mhm.
Because maybe the system doesn't serve my nervous system. Maybe there's another way to be a therapist, to work in my field that doesn't trade dollars for hours.
Mhm. Well, I had an interesting example once, but it was it's understanding that when we're really under stress, we're not really making the best decisions that we possibly can either. I knew a fantastic therapist and I asked her to come and work with us, and she was charging, let's say, X amount of dollars. I said, come and work with us and you will make 2X. That'll be yours. I will be charging your clients 4X, but you will make 2X. And she said,
Mhm.
no, I will never pay somebody half of what I'm taking in. I went, okay, it's your choice, and I respect it. But from a business perspective, you got to understand making twice as much with a full office is better than, and wouldn't have to pay the rent or the marketing or the,
Mhm.
like any of that. That was all taken care of.
Mhm.
So there are times when we get into those scenarios and we're just like infuriated by ideas, but they're just not registering and we can't function. Talk to me about that.
Oh my goodness. Core beliefs. Can we talk about core beliefs for just a hot minute?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I ran into so many of these on my journey that I did not even know. And I've been in this field for a long time. Like I'm not a spring chicken out here, and I've worked with a lot of clients and I understand, cognitive behavioral therapy. But my goodness, when it comes to being a business owner, it is so interesting how these belief systems crop up in ways that they just get in the way. And you don't even realize they're getting in the way until you suddenly you suddenly look around and you're like, wait, how did I get to this place where my clinician payroll is X? And that's like not a sustainable clinician, percentage of our revenue. That's not sustainable. How did I get here? Well, I got here because I have a really hard time saying I have a really hard time saying no because I want to, I'm afraid that people are going to leave if I offer too little or it doesn't feel right. I know they need to survive and all of these other belief systems that we have that we make decisions based on. And if we don't know what those belief systems are and we don't know how they show up in our body and how they then inform our decision making, as business owners, we can get into quite a pickle.
Oh, absolutely. And it's I think the most painful point in my life was when I realized I don't know what I don't know. It's like there's just so much, I mean, an infinite amount of knowledge that I'm never going to know, but it's like, can we just narrow it down to what I need to know so I quit just beating myself up over nothing? And because there's so many easier ways to do this, it's
There's so
crazy.
many easier ways. I just had a conversation this morning, actually, like I had said before we went on that I had my monthly financial meeting,
Mhm.
and we were talking about these various different tasks that just continue to not get done, right? Because there's certain things that they're not in alignment.
Mhm.
Basically, these are tasks that have to do with the financing of a business that are not in alignment with how my nervous system operates. And I ended the meeting. I said, I need to know who else can do these tasks. And she's
Because they
like, well,
got to get done.
they got to get done. She goes, well, it has to be the business owner. I was like, I don't believe that. The
No,
owner of the owner of
never,
Gillette doesn't do these
ever.
things. It doesn't have to be me. And this was
Absolutely.
and this was sort of one of those eye-opening moments where
Mhm.
I said, I don't need to continue beating my head against the wall because I'm trying to do something that I don't really have the tools, the skills, the knowledge, or the inclination to do. What I need to do is I need to find someone else to do it.
Yes.
And I need to hire that person and get it done. And then it's
Right?
done. And
Uh,
then I don't have to stress.
my favorite example is people like, Tony Robbins or Sir Richard Branson run hundreds of companies, not two, hundreds. They don't do anything in those businesses other than oversight. And you have to understand that whatever task you have, somebody else is so good at that. You can pay them like $100 and go, hey, can I get this out? Or whatever the thing is. Somebody is fantastic. Even though they charge 250,000 for a full-time occupation, they can come in, do the thing, walk away, and it's done and
And
it's
be
done
done.
right
And
and
be done.
better.
I don't need to sit on hold with the unemployment office trying to resolve an issue. That is not a good use of my time.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to ask you about a Cinderella story of one of your clients in just a moment. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
So I am super excited to hear about a Cinderella story of one of your clients.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to talk about this. So I have someone that I was working with who they came to me feeling as though they didn't really know what the next step was, right? They had a practice that felt like it should be successful. Like on paper, it looked successful. I think they were making maybe $150,000 a year. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but they were seeing a lot of clients and their practice was insurance based. And there was something very important to them about maintaining that connection so that they could continue to see clients who were maybe of an underserved population. There was something very important to them, but they were seeing like 30 clients a week and they were really, really tired. And they knew that at some point this wasn't sustainable. They weren't really able to take vacations because they were working. I mean, when we're in private practice, for those of you who don't work for a company, you're your own boss. You don't have a PTO plan, right? You don't get vacation time. You don't get days off. If you stop working, the money stops coming in and you're paying to go somewhere. So it's kind of like a double whammy. And so she said, I just don't quite know what my next step is here. And so we took a look at what was working for her and what wasn't working for her. And what was working for her was that she did actually really love being a therapist. She had a really good reputation in the community. People knew who she was. They sent her a lot of referrals. What wasn't working for her was that she was finding that, and this is interesting because we did kind of a what I call it practice energy audit, something that I do with everybody who comes through my doors. We look at where is your energy going in the practice? Where is your time going in your practice? And what we found was that she had a high percentage of clients who I would call high acuity clients. And again, you're asking me this question kind of off the top of my head. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was a lot. And in that conversation, we really determined that the energy that was going towards those clients was far in excess than the actual time she was spending with the clients compared to this other group of clients that she very much, I mean, she very much enjoyed working with everybody, but they didn't come home with her at the end of the day. So we worked on a couple different things. We worked on integrating what I call micro mindful strategies or micro somatic strategies throughout her day. And we worked on boundaries. We worked on so we created that list and we started working a little bit on mindset, but not like a ton on mindset because I really do more of the body-based work. We identified that she had a hard time saying no when she really felt like someone needs help and I can help. I am the only one that can help them. She had a hard time saying no with that. She had a hard time holding boundaries with her actual schedule, with her actual hours. So her hour would be an hour and 5 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes. And then she still had to write a note. And these are high acuity clients. So the notes are a little bit more complicated because you really want your documentation to meet all the professional standards that it needs to meet to protect yourself and your clients and all of these other categories. And then she didn't have time between sessions to write notes, and she didn't have time between sessions to take care of herself.
Or bio breaks.
or take a bio break,
Like,
but for
come
lack
on,
of anything
people.
else, or eat something or drink some water or whatever it might
Right?
be. So we worked on embodied boundaries through somatic practices, and
Nice.
we worked on really understanding what was hard for her about resting, what was hard for her about taking a break. She integrated practices, like I said, micro mindfulness practices between sessions. Her sessions became more contained. She realized she didn't have to say yes to every client that called. she identified that there were some clients that probably were not best served by her, that probably were better served by another clinician. So she started making some referrals out. She realigned how her practice was, like the weight in her practice, the energy weight in her practice. So she continued to work with clients, some high acuity clients, but they were not the vast majority of the clients that she was working with. And she identified several insurance companies that were not paying her well enough to do the work that she was. Some insurance companies are great. Not going to throw anyone under the bus right now. Some are not.
And in
Some
all
are
fairness,
not.
they're changing every day. So,
And they're changing every day. And so
Yeah.
she ended a couple contracts with some of
Hmm.
those insurances and replaced those with private pay clients
Hmm.
and was able to reduce her caseload. I don't remember exactly, 22, 23 a week. She
Nice.
maintained the same revenue. She didn't lose revenue. And at the end of the day, she just felt better. She was able to show up at home,
Phenomenal. Beautiful.
restored, rejuvenated, ready to be with her family and spend time with the kids. And
Smile.
it's wonderful. I mean, it's just a good
Nice.
feeling when you experience that and
Absolutely, it is. So
you're
I
able to
know our
witness.
listeners are going to want more from you. How did they start their journey with you?
Absolutely. So my website is the somaticintegrationinstitute.org. And I know you're going to put that up in the show
Yeah.
notes. But if you are listening to this particular show, I do have a special offer. It's kind of a preview of what we do in the Catalyst Collective. And the Catalyst Collective, let me just
Yeah.
say, the Catalyst Collective it's a 7-month program that brings you through all the different activators of my somatic leverage system. And it's done in community. It's done with other clinicians. We have pods, we have, weekly coaching calls. You don't have to do very much except show up. So I do highly recommend that. This is you're going to get a lot out of this, but it's not the same. So go to flourishingpractice.org/business dash ownership. All right. And you are going to get a taste of what I offer in the Catalyst Collective. And if you really just want to connect with me, reach out, info@somaticintegration.org, and we can set up a time to have a chat and talk about what's going on with you and your practice and what you need.
Beautiful. Love it. And again, I will say, scroll down. Links are in the show notes and open up in a new browser because we're not done yet. So, Helen, you touched on it earlier, but I want to know, at what point did you know that you were a special kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur? Like there's a difference between I think I need to, cool my heels and hey, I can start my own company.
Um, so you're gonna actually think
Awesome.
this is awesome. I actually have three businesses. One of them is a
Nice.
nonprofit. Apparently, I don't do well with downtime. So I get ideas. I actually didn't identify as an entrepreneur until several years into my journey. I came across a coach who I was working with who labeled me that and then invited me to take a couple assessments, like the
Mhm.
Kolbe assessment and the Clifton Strengths assessment. And the Kolbe assessment came back and she goes, "This is like classic entrepreneurial wiring." And I was like, "What are you talking
Nice.
about?" But it's not something that I really identified with until I recognized it in myself
Mhm.
that I have a lot of ideas. I'm very kind of curious about how people work and and what can we do and how can we shift and change things. And yeah, it's so fun,
Right?
Michelle. It's
It's
so
not nearly as
fun.
scary as people think it is. It's like you've
No,
jumped off the edge, but it's a really cool edge to
no.
jump off and a great sensation.
It's so funny. I was saying to someone relatively recently, I said, I don't think, oh, they were talking about this was a conversation I was in, and they were saying this is someone who I was chatting with, not necessarily in the context of my work, but they were a clinician and they were talking about how they were feeling like they just didn't want to do this anymore,
Mm.
that like maybe it would be easier to just like stock shelves at Walmart. I thought, and I said to them, I was like, do you know what? I don't think I'm employable anymore. I don't think anyone would actually want to employ me, which is an interesting sort of realization to have that
Right.
there are there are those of us out there that have a lot of ideas and want to do things a certain way, and see the world a certain way, and see the possibilities and the opportunities, and just don't want to be held back by another person's vision.
Right? I think if I got hired at Walmart to stock shelves, my first inclination would be, okay, you can do this faster, better, easier, right?
Mhm. This system
Let's
is
talk
not a good
strategies,
system.
people.
This is not a good system for stocking shelves. I've got ideas.
Exactly. I'd either get fired again, or I'd be management. One of the
Yeah.
two within the first 3 weeks. You've been absolutely awesome. Any last words for our peeps?
I don't really have any last words except that if this resonates with you, if you're in a position where you're feeling like you're trying to grow your business and you're exhausted and it just doesn't seem like it's in alignment with what your body wants and needs, reach out and talk with me. I do specialize in working with clinicians and therapists, but I would be happy to talk with anybody.
Premises are the same, people. I love it. Thank you so much for your time, Helen. I appreciate it, and I know how valuable it is.
Thank you, Michelle.
Awesome. Peeps, this is Michelle Nedelec. Thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show, share it with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.